Don't look now. If the Saints win tonight, they could be in contention for this division. Monday Night Football, Saints going into Tampa Bay. Let's do it. What is up, guys? Welcome to the Edge DFS. My name is Tyson Smith, joined by Ellie Hernandez. We're doing Showdown as usual. Monday Night Football. Bucks favored at home by 3. A pretty low total. A lot of injuries to talk about. 2 disappointing teams. This might be a little bit of an interesting build tonight, simply because both of these teams are pretty inconsistent. We've got Alvin Kamara, who's only scored really a touchdown out of 1 out of 10 games. He's typically one of the best players in the league, not really paying off. Tom Brady is underperforming. We've got Mike Evans potentially going against LaShawn Lattimore. And we've got Godwin, who's going to be very, very popular. So anyways, what is up, guys? Ellie, what's going on with you?
Not too much, man. Just looking forward to get back in the action here tonight. I think we're gonna have a little bit more of an exciting game, a little less lopsided and predictable as last night. So I'm just excited for this one tonight. I generally enjoy watching Tom Brady getting to play with Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, man.
Yeah, at least we've got some star players going tonight. I mean, last night we did as well. Let's look at how that went last night. This is the optimal lineup. The best possible lineup that you could have done last night. Tony Pollard at captain, CeeDee Lamb. You've got Ezekiel Elliott in the flex, Michael Gallup, Cowboys defense, and Alec Pierce, the lone Colt. So Tony Pollard at captain there. We had talked about potentially putting him at captain with Zeke in the flex, along with CeeDee Lamb. The one thing that we don't see here is a quarterback, which is interesting. You don't see Dak Prescott. There is a lineup that is very unique or very similar to this that scored 132.0, so only 0.3 away, that does have Dak in instead of Zeke. But what jumps out to you here with this, man? Basically, Gallup just screwed everything up for me personally. And obviously that late Cowboys touchdown absolutely destroyed me. I knew by not playing them it was a risk, but they were going to be popular. And at that price, I was like, all right, they're going to have to score a touchdown, which they did. So what jumps out to you?
Yeah, man. I think the first thing is I'm just really annoyed with defense and special teams. Like, yeah, Matt Ryan played pretty poor game last night, but anything that could have gone wrong went wrong there, and it's just annoying when you see a 6,200 defense pay its price off.
It's so annoying.
But outside of that, like it's really interesting. You got the running back handcuff and a receiver handcuff, and no quarterbacks. I know we talked
Yeah.
about it last night, but no quarterbacks was the approach last night, and it ended up working out. So sometimes that's the way to go.
Guess what? McLaughlin didn't make the optimal, even though I thought he was for sure. All right. Let's move on from that. That was not. I didn't play a ton of lineups. I played a couple like high dollar single entries, high dollar depending on what your opinion of high dollar is, and it didn't go. It didn't go well. CeeDee Lamb at captain. It was looking pretty good for a while, and then things just started getting weird. Let's get into tonight's matchup. We're starting fresh. New Orleans going into Florida, into Tampa. -3 at home, -164 on the money line. It's 41.5 is the over-under. Some places have it at 41, depending on where you're looking. And look at that ownership difference. Quite a big difference here. So what are your thoughts here, man? You know, we say it all the time. This is a division rivalry game. It's in prime time. Anything can happen. Both of these teams are not really playing up to what they should be. But you got a guy like Andy Dalton, Mr. Primetime Andy Dalton over here. I believe his record on primetime is like 6-20. Like he's going back to his Cincinnati days. He just cannot win in these big games. But it's a one-game slate. Who knows what can happen? So what are your thoughts here, man? Is this clearly a Tampa Bay win, or what do you think the Saints can kind of come up big and maybe Alvin Kamara can get more involved here?
Yeah. Look, I think this is a tough matchup for the Saints. That's not really news to anybody, but this should be a tough matchup for Alvin Kamara. I mean, Todd Bowles and his run defense, they're pretty good, but he gets involved in other ways. So I think Alvin Kamara is probably going to be the main central point of this offense if they're going to be successful. But I think the piece to keep in mind here is we talk about this a lot. Ring the bell for a division rivalry. They've already played once this year. The Bucks won that game 20-10, if I recall correctly. But it's really difficult to beat a professional football team twice in the same season. I've said it before on these shows. I wouldn't be surprised if New Orleans is able to keep this moderately competitive. I do think Tampa Bay still pulls it out, but I don't know if we're in those days of just assuming that Tampa Bay is going to blow through teams anymore.
Yeah.
They've had some struggles, and I think we'll look at some stuff on the injury report that is impacting them a little bit. But with the ownership going heavy Tampa Bay, I think this might be a good slate for kind of balanced builds. Maybe 3-3 is the way to go. I don't necessarily want to get too crazy with the Saints just because I don't believe in Andy Dalton. But again, it might just be free leverage and a game that could end up being competitive with a -3 spread.
So let's set the scene a little bit here. So the Saints are 4-8, the Bucks are 5-6. I believe that's correct. Look, if the Saints win, they're what, a game and a half back or something to that effect. They're kind of right in it. This division is not good. It's basically up for grabs. So I think the Bucks really need to come out and win this game. And if they do, they can at least feel a little bit more confident that they'll probably win this division. But look, New Orleans was shut out last week against San Francisco. They put up 0 points. Tampa Bay lost to Cleveland last week. Not ideal. So look, I don't know, man. This could go either way. I am leaning more towards like 4-2 builds, or if you do Kamara at captain, maybe a 2-4. But we'll have to get into a little bit deeper in order to figure that out. Let's get into our injuries. There's quite a few things to talk about here.
Yeah, just pain. It was pain everywhere.
So I apologize, guys. This is kind of hard for you guys to see, obviously. But my God, there's a lot to talk about here. So let's start with the Bucs side. Cameron Brate is questionable with an illness. He's expected to play. There's that bug that's been going around the NFL. He should play. You've got Leonard Fournette questionable. He should play. He's expected to play, which causes a whole lot of issues, fantasy-wise for us trying to figure out who the hell to play in this backfield. And you've got Russell Gage questionable. He's expected to play. Now let's talk about some other guys that make a huge impact that you're not necessarily putting into your lineups. Sean Murphy Bunting is doubtful, not going to play. Akeem Hicks questionable. Tristan Wirfs, which is a huge deal in my opinion for this offensive line, for this run game, and for the pass game just in general. I think they take a huge hit by having him out. Antoine Winfield is doubtful. Vita Vea questionable. And Mike Edwards, the safety, is doubtful. Man, there's a lot to talk about here. So let's start with the Bucs. You got Cameron Brate coming back. You got Leonard Fournette coming back and Russell Gage. So what are your thoughts here, man? How do we treat this Leonard Fournette coming back?
Look, I don't want to get too ahead of ourselves, but I mean, I think that what we've seen from Rashad White is that he is a better back, and I really just expect Tampa Bay to continue giving the ball to him. But of course, as soon as I say that, that's the night that Leonard Fournette has 85% of the carries and 2 rushing touchdowns. But I think it's really important for us to pay attention to the defensive backs on the Tampa Bay side. If they're really going to be missing pretty much their entire secondary, I think it does open up some stuff for Andy Dalton. He's getting those prime Jameis Winston numbers, 350 yards, 3 touchdowns, and 3 interceptions. So I think that's something that we can consider maybe bumping up our exposure to Andy Dalton a little bit, who's coming in a little cheap. But other than that, man, again, I think the main point is Marshawn Lattimore. Does he play? Does he not play? That's the one I'll be keeping an eye on. And everybody just hop in the Discord. We'll keep that information up to date as we get closer to lock. About an hour before, we'll post actives and inactives.
So let's talk about the Saints side. Jawan Johnson is out. He leads the team in touchdowns. He's a big red zone threat. So does that open, where does that usage go? Do we see more, does Adam Troutman get those opportunities? I don't know. But I think it just opens up more opportunity in the red zone, which to me kind of signifies obviously more Kamara and maybe a little bit of Taysom Hill here in this situation. When he leads the team in touchdowns, Juwan Johnson does. You're missing him. That's kind of a big deal. Marshawn Lattimore questionable, Bradley Roby questionable, Pete Warner questionable, and then you have Kevin White, I think, who's $200. He's questionable. Look, if Marshawn Lattimore plays, how down are you on Mike Evans? Because we know the history between those guys. We know if you look at the outputs here, Lattimore has really locked Evans down in the past, and these guys go after each other, man. This is a pretty big rivalry. They hate each other. Evans got ejected earlier in the year for shoving him after he was acting like a bitch or whatever that situation was. They went at it, and I don't know that if Marshawn Lattimore is in, I think the ownership collapses on Evans, especially at captain. And maybe I want to try. Maybe I want to try. Even if he is in, even if Lattimore is going against him, maybe I want to try some Evans. So what are your thoughts here, man? What are you going to do if Lattimore plays? Which I think he probably will.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think people are just going to naturally fade Mike Evans a little bit because he's, it's not necessarily like quiet news or quiet that Marshawn has had great success against Mike Evans, but Mike Evans is still Mike Evans. I also think a lot of that success was predicated on the fact that the Saints had a much better system, a much better defense in team holistically. So, I mean, he's a solid corner, but he's not Darrelle Revis. Darrelle Revis didn't matter who the other 10 people was on the defense, right? He's locking down your number one.
Yeah.
I still believe in Mike Evans. Mike Evans is at some point, what are you going to do? Are you going to cover Chris Godwin? Are you going to cover Julio Jones? Or are you just going to just hope Marshawn Lattimore can cover Mike Evans all day one-on-one? So I like him regardless of whether or not Lattimore plays.
At the end of the day, Mike Evans is still a professional. He's a Pro Bowler. He's an all-pro type player. He's a professional too. So I do understand that Lattimore has had his number, and I think most people will just knee-jerk reaction, not want to play Evans because they're scared that he's going to get shut down. I still think he can do something. It's one game. All right, let's get into our breakdown. Go ahead. Sorry, bro.
No. I was just going to say it works out well because we're going right back into quarterback right now. But this is about that time of year too. I know we were talking about it being a competitive game, but Tom Brady knows where his team is. It's about that time in the year where the Bucs, Tom Brady's team, kind of start putting things together. So I also wouldn't be surprised if him and Mike Evans just come out and dominate this whole goddamn game.
Yeah.
So I mean, it works out well because we're talking about Tom Brady now.
So Tom Brady, he's 10.4K. He's probably going to throw the ball 30 plus, maybe 40 times. He's definitely going to be throwing the ball. That's a fact. How effective will he be? I don't know. If he puts up 18 fantasy points like he did last week, I think there's a good chance he's in the optimal, especially with a 41 total. I'm probably going to go heavy on Brady. I don't quite know what my output is for lineups. I don't know if I'm going to do a bunch of lineups or I don't know if I'm going to do a single entry or not. I don't know quite yet. But Tom Brady is going to be heavily involved. I think that he will, be able to at least put up what you need to have him in the flex. Not really interested in him at captain. But what are your thoughts on Brady? And then we'll get to this other clusterfuck here on the other side of the ball.
Yeah, and look, Tom Brady, he's probably a little bit cheap for what I consider his output to be. I mean, when you're looking at his numbers, he's 16, 17 points. Then he's got weeks of 20, 22, 29, right? Outside those 2 weeks of 11 and 13, 10-3, that's going to be probably in the optimal, or 10-4, that's probably an optimal flex play. So look, I think you probably have to have a healthy amount of exposure to him. And just given his price as well as Andy Dalton's price, I think you can actually play both in lineups pretty comfortably if you're expecting kind of a higher total game. But look, I love Tom Brady tonight. I think you're going to need to have a decent amount of them, or you're just going to need to pick the right receiver. Jesus.
Well, hey, that's true too. The right white receiver.
Yeah, Scotty Miller, Shelby Miller.
Yeah.
Anyways, look. It's Tom Brady, it's Chris Godwin, and Mike Evans. Stack it as best you can, as often as you can.
Look, I sort of buried the lead here. I mean, 108 rating allowed to wide receivers from New Orleans pass defense, which is dead last. So, wide receivers are finding success against this defense, and you got some of the best wide receivers in the league playing on the field at the same time. You even have a guy like Julio Jones, who we know is capable, what he's capable of. He's towards the end of his career, obviously, but the guy can still go off. Andy Dalton's 9K. I think this is a good price for him because I think people are going to be enticed to play him at 9K because he's cheap. For a quarterback, any quarterback under 9K is usually going to be a pretty decent value. But Andy Dalton, we've seen him in prime time. We've seen what he's capable of. We've seen him make mistakes, throw picks. I just don't quite understand what is going on with Jameis Winston that they're not even going to attempt to play him after what's, this team is not very good right now. What do they have to lose by trying to by trying out Jameis Winston. I don't know, man. Like, is Andy Dalton that much better? Is Jameis Winston is he still hurt? I mean, like,
It hurts my soul,
I mean, I feel
and
bad for the
that's
guy.
all I can say.
I feel bad for him. So what are your thoughts on Andy Dalton? I'm probably not going to play Andy Dalton tonight much. He's probably going to be around 40% owned because of his price tag. I'm going to be half the field on that probably. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that's probably reasonable. 25 to 30%. I mean, 40%, 50% is probably way too high for a guy who really just sucks at the quarterback position. But the thing to consider is if we really are walking into all these injuries in the secondary for Tampa Bay, then I don't know if we really can sleep on them. These weeks of 10, 9, 11 points may not work, but at 9K, if he hits 13 or 14, that might be enough to be in the optimal lineup. So I think you should probably be with the field slightly under, maybe around 30, 35%. But anything over 50% is probably way too high for Andy Dalton. So we'll just need to keep an eye on ownership as we get closer to lock.
All right, we got to talk about Taysom Hill here. He's 6,400. I believe he had like 9 snaps at quarterback last week. He had a handful of snaps at tight end, handful of snaps at wide receiver. I think in this game, look, the Saints, this is kind of a must win. I mean, realistically. I mean, technically it's not, but it kind of is if they want to even have a chance. Really, their chance to make the playoffs is probably best to win the division. So I see them doing crazy shit in this game, and I see them experimenting and doing weird stuff. They don't really. There's no reason for them not to. Taysom Hill is usually the kind of guy that does those weird, crazy things. So, like I said earlier, with Juwan Johnson being out, maybe you see some more Taysom Hill tight end snaps. Maybe you see some more random gadget plays with him. 6,400, he's not going to be popular. Nobody's going to want to play him. I do think a Kamara Taysom Hill combo and then run it back with four Tampa Bay guys might be an interesting build, and it's definitely going to be unique. So what are your thoughts on Taysom Hill? We can't get too carried away with him because we just don't know what's going to happen with him. But are you, is this a captain opportunity for you, or are you more thinking flex for him?
I think both are fine, to be honest with you. I mean, Jawan Jennings is the tight end like 4 or 5 coming into this game, which is kind of crazy. You got a couple top end dudes. You got really you got Kelsey, and then Jawan Jennings. So or not Jawan Jennings, Jawan Johnson. Sorry, the other guys on the Niners. But look, that's volume that's going to be spread out, and I do think that Taysom Hill gets a little bit of a boost. Now, with Adam Troutman being in tight end position, I think that he's going to still get some options and targets as well, because they are still going to run Taysom Hill out of these gadget formations. But look, I like Taysom Hill. I think it's a good opportunity for him to probably end up with 2 or 3 touchdowns. It's a primetime game. And, not to get too crazy, but if Andy Dalton just sucks dick tonight, it's possible that Taysom Hill finishes out at quarterback.
Yeah.
I just think go ahead.
If Dalton throws 2 picks, one of which for a pick 6 or something, I mean, what are the chances that Jameis is thrown in this game? I don't know. Any Saints fans know a little bit more behind the scenes, comment down below what you think or hit us up in the Discord. But, the chances that Andy Dalton has a bad game, I think are pretty high, or at least a below average game. Yeah. So at what point do they say, screw this guy? We have nothing to lose. We're paying Jameis Winston, let's throw him in the game. I don't know. I could be completely wrong about that. But just like you're saying, they could also utilize Taysom Hill a little bit more at the quarterback spot, potentially. All right, we got to move on here. We're taking a little bit too much time on that. Let's start with Tampa Bay. Let's get through the nastiness right off the bat. Rachaad White, 7K. Leonard Fournette, questionable, most likely coming back. For this game, he's 7,400. Dude, I don't know what to do here, man. If Rachaad White was the only running back and Leonard Fournette was out for this game, I'd lock Rachaad White into every single lineup, or at least a lot of lineups, because I think he, at 7K, is a great option. But I think at this point, it could be a 50-50 split. Maybe we see Leonard, take the opening drive, then we see Rachaad White take a few drives, they rotate out. I don't know, man. Flip a coin on this. I don't think that they're going to be very popular either one of these guys, because we just don't know where the volume's going. So what do we do here?
So look, I'm gonna keep it real simple. We'll just play the two scenarios. First is if Leonard Fournette's out for whatever reason, then Rashad White will probably be in 100% of my lineups. And he's probably one of my top 4 captain options at that point. But just if both are healthy, I mean, Leonard Fournette at 7,400, I don't think that he's going to continue to get work. And the way that we've seen this dude perform, Rashad White, over the last couple of weeks has been pretty interesting. I mean, Fournette's averaged 3 yards or less per carry in 6 of the 9 games that he's played. White has 4.5 and 4.8 pretty much in his last 2 games. And he's getting involved in the pass game. So look, I think this is a prime opportunity to kind of transition to White being the workhorse back and Fournette being a spell back or a goal line or a situational back. But with that said, I think the way to prioritize these backs is Rashad White, flex captain, I think is fine for a decent amount of exposure. Leonard Fournette, I think you maybe want to throw him in lineups, a couple captain lineups, maybe 1 or 2, just in case he does have that 2-3 rushing touchdown game. Or 2 rushing touchdowns and a receiving touchdown. We all know Lenny's going to do that to us one of these nights. So I think that's the way to go about it. Captain only for Leonard Fournette, just maybe 1 or 2 lineups, and then Rashad White probably be with the field or slightly above the field. I don't think they're going to get either of these guys are going to get much ownership just because of the question marks.
Yeah, agreed. And one thing to note is Leonard Fournette is a pretty decent pass blocker. So he's been able to, maybe he'll get a couple more third down opportunities. Maybe they're not quite comfortable with the rookie staying in these tight fourth quarter situations where it's 3rd and long. I don't know. But I think if Leonard Fournette comes in under 25%, I might be a little bit higher on him. I think I'd rather play Lenny at captain more often because I think that he's either going to go off or he's just going to have a 5-point fantasy game. That's kind of how I see things going. Let's go to the other side here. Alvin Kamara has been incredibly disappointing. It's not really his fault, I don't think. I don't understand why they can't just get this guy involved in whatever possible way they can. Keep Mark Ingram in the backfield. Use Alvin Kamara. You have him, motion quite a bit. I don't know, dude. Like, I don't understand why they can't get this guy the ball more. He hasn't scored enough touchdowns this year. He's 10K. On paper, he's one of the best plays on the slate. But there's a situation where he comes out and, he gets you 7 to 8 fantasy points, and that's just not going to be enough. He fumbled the ball twice last week. Really I think he got like 9 carries or something. So I don't know what to do with Kamara. On paper, I would have said, man, lock him in, put him in the captain a lot. But I'm a little bit more hesitant this particular game with him. What do you think about this?
Yeah, man, I'm kind of right there with you. I mean, at his price tag, like 10K, it's not as expensive as we've seen him in previous season, but he still is going to need a touchdown to pay that off. He's still getting his 8, 9, 10 targets per game, but those aren't turning into fantasy points. I mean, what did he have 9 total fantasy points last week, despite how many 9 targets?
Yeah.
Like that's not ideal, right? He has 7 targets and 6 receptions. Like if you told me a dude with 6 receptions had 9 fantasy points, I'd be like, what the fuck are you talking about?
Yeah.
Right. So that's an issue. But with that said, what do we think the highest scoring Saint is going to be? And are we going to be able to afford that player? And I think it's a realistic scenario where Alvin Kamara is still the highest scoring Saint, and we can fit him on this slate, right? So I think you're probably going to need to be even with the field. I just think you can be a little bit less exposed to the captain spot as you normally would. If he's not getting those touchdowns, he will not be the optimal captain.
Yeah.
So that's how that works. But I do think that there is some utility in handcuffing Kamara and Ingram. Kamara could have 3 receptions so that he takes down to the 1-yard line and Mark Ingram carries them all in, or Taysom Hill for that matter, right? So I do think at 4,400 he's interesting. Maybe come off one of the kickers and get a little bit more exposure to him. But I think you're going to have a pretty healthy amount of these guys sprinkled in. If they can get the ground game running, it's the best way to keep Tom Brady off the field, right?
Yeah.
Burn the clock. So I think they're going to feed both of these guys.
Yeah, I agree. With Vita Vea questionable, Akeem Hicks questionable, if those guys are out, man, that could really open up this rush offense for the Saints. The Tampa Bay rush defense gives up 4.6 yards per carry this year. That's that's pretty good for the opposing team. And their pass defense, the interesting thing here is they give up 106 rating to pass catching running backs. So these pass catching running backs, hello, Kamara, they give up a decent amount of yards and a decent amount of points to them. So keep that in mind. If you're looking at Kamara, I think for cash, I think him in the flex, I absolutely think you should play him because he has the most volume on this team. And he's also one of these guys for tournaments. You're going to want to get some captain exposure to him because he's the one player on the slate, probably him and Mike Evans, who can go absolute nuclear. And if you don't have him at captain, you cannot even min cash sometimes. All right, let's go to wide receivers here for the Saints. There's not a whole lot to talk about. Chris Olave, 8,400. He's by far getting the most opportunities, the most targets. He's the clear number one. And then it's a big drop off after that. You get Jarvis Landry, who played last week after being injured for a handful of weeks. He's 5,200. Rashid Shaheed, 1,400. We know what he can do. 1,400, man, that's really interesting. 1,400, we've seen him have a lot of long touchdowns, or at least a lot of long plays or opportunities. Kevin White's $200. He's questionable, but if he plays, I'm kind of interested. And then Marquez Callaway is potentially coming back at 800. So I don't even know where this rotation really goes. I think if you had to guess, it's probably Olave is the clear, obviously, number one. Landry, Shaheed, White, Callaway. I think you just need to kind of get all those guys and kind of mix them in. But would you rather just pay down for Shaheed instead of having to worry about a guy like Jarvis Landry at 5,200?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the way that I'm prioritizing this is just focusing on Chris Olave as much as I possibly can, right? That dude is going to get a serious amount of work. He's going to get a bunch of targets. And we know he's going to get the volume, right? If he has a week at his 20 points at 8,400, he could end up being the optimal captain. So I am also interested in him a little bit at captain too. That said, not too high on Jarvis Landry or Traquan Smith, or even Kevin White for that matter. I will have a little bit of exposure to him if he's active, just because he's $200. If we need that kind of $200 salary saving, we don't just play $200 guys to play him here, guys. Like, we do it if there's a benefit to playing him. But
Opportunity.
Rashid Shaheed at 1,400 is exactly.
It's all about opportunity. I mean, there's a chance that. I know Kevin White played a decent amount of snaps last week, but if he's on the field for like 10 plays, I'm not playing him. Like, I'd rather play a tight end who's on the field 50% of the time and has like 2 opportunities to score a touchdown than play a dude who's just barely going to see the field. I mean, that's pretty obvious to me. But what were you saying about Shaheed?
Yeah, man, I like Shaheed. He's going to get involved in these crazy pass routes, right? And you were talking about it earlier. Without Juwan Johnson, their number one, tight end guy or touchdown guy, they might try more creative stuff tonight. And I think that's where Raheed Shaheed gets involved. At 1,400, as long as he doesn't have a 1.8 or a 2.2, like, I think he's getting pretty decent value.
Focus on Chris Olave here. Obviously, I think what may have to happen, you probably can fit Kamara and Olave together. But I think you're probably going to have to make the decision of an either or if you're doing like 4-2 Tampa Bay stacks, pretty much. All right, let's go to the Tampa Bay side of things. Chris Godwin is 10.6K. Mike Evans 9,600. The age-old question: which guy? Right? I think you can absolutely play them together. But what ends up happening here is if you play them together, you're probably going to want to put Brady. I know there's a situation like we saw in last night's game where Dak wasn't, Gallup and CD were in the lineup and Dak wasn't. I mean, that could happen, but, more often than not, if you got 2 wide receivers, especially one of them at captain, you probably want to throw Tom Brady in there with them. So having these really expensive dudes, Godwin, Evans, and Brady together, not a lot of people are going to do that because you probably can't. So what are your thoughts here, man? Like I said in the opening, like if you guys are just skipping around, obviously Marshawn Lattimore is questionable if he plays. Probably going to crater Mike Evans' ownership, but I still think you can play him. Chris Godwin is on paper the better play because he's going to get more targets. Chris Godwin's the medium route type guy. He's going to get you more targets, more receptions. Mike Evans is the guy that can get you 3 touchdowns on 5 receptions for 100 yards. That's the kind of guy he is. So what are your thoughts here, man? interested in Mike Evans in the flex? Or are you probably just going with captain with him?
No, I mean, I think both Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, I'm probably just gonna have a rule on that one of them will be in every single lineup at minimum, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And those are probably my two favorite captain options, right? Chris Godwin, probably first, and then Mike Evans. I don't give a shit if Marshawn Lattimore plays. Like, if I get it, I get the matchup is one thing, but Mike Evans is a grown ass man. Man, if he shows up tonight and decides he was going to dominate, he probably will. Right? If him and Tom Brady are on, like we've seen it for the past 20 goddamn years, it doesn't matter. Like like I don't know, man. I don't know what to say. So Tom Brady's a great quarterback. Mike Evans, great wide receiver. I think you play both of them. Yeah, you try and get as much lineup as you can with both these wide receivers. I think they crush. Now, that being said, I probably am not interested in Julio, Russell Gage, and I might be interested in Miller and Perriman, especially at 600 and $200. Didn't Perriman have a long touchdown like 2 or 3 weeks ago?
Yeah,
Like that's the one thing with these random dudes is God, Tom Brady will just hit him up the seam for like a 60-yard touchdown in the middle of a game and it'll fuck everything up.
yeah.
So
I mean,
I think you can sprinkle these two guys in too.
I think Perriman and Scotty Miller are way riskier than some of these tight ends we're about to talk about.
Hmm.
Perriman and Scotty Miller may see the field like 5 plays or something. I mean, they might not see the field with Godwin's, Evans, Gage, and Julio Jones. That's 4 wide receivers. Maybe Julio Jones gets hurt. I mean, it would not surprise me if one of these guys got hurt in this game. But you're not building lineups on injuries. Like, there's no way to do that. So Perriman at 200, Scotty Miller at 600. I'm not super interested simply because I just don't know that they're going to see the field. Julio Jones is always an interesting option at 5,400. He'll be low owned. They've gotten him involved in the run game a little bit. A couple of those end arounds here. I see a potential end around for a touchdown in his future. At 5,400, I don't know if that's enough to pay that off if he just has a down day overall and only gets a rushing touchdown or maybe only one receiving touchdown. You're going to need a lot more out of him, unfortunately, and that's why that price tag is not super appealing. I'm not super interested in Russell Gage. If I had to rank these guys, it'd be Julio Jones, Gage, Perriman, Miller. But Julio is probably the only other guy besides Godwin and Evans that I'm interested in here. Let's go to tight end. So Cameron Brate, questionable with an illness. He's 3K. Cade Otton, 1,800. Cade Otton's probably going to be on the field more, but Cameron Brate's going to run more routes and have more of an ability to score touchdowns. So Cade Otton at 1,800 is interesting. Even with Cameron Brate in, I still think Cade Otton is an option, and no one's going to play Cade Otton. And shit, no one's probably going to play Cameron Brate either. You're talking about 2 guys that will probably be under 10% owned. Maybe if, when inactives come out and Brate is obviously active, which he should be, so double check that, obviously. But his ownership might go up, and Cade Otton's might go down into the 5% or less range. I think all these guys, are options. Kokeeft even. I'd rather have Kokeeft than Perriman, in my opinion. Kokeeft's like a fullback or an extra lineman. They're all risky plays. Don't get me wrong. You need a touchdown out of these guys because they're not going to get the 5-6 receptions. They're going to have 1 or 2 opportunities. If they don't score a touchdown on those 1 or 2 opportunities, they're going to be a bust. But a guy like Cade Otton at 1,800, if he gets you 3 fantasy points, you're not happy, but you might be able to still cash at that price, right? So what are your thoughts here?
Yeah, I mean, Cameron Brate, he had 5 targets last week. I think he only had 1 or 2 receptions. I think Cade Otton was out, but and then even then, Kokeif has had a touchdown in the past couple weeks. So look, all these guys are priced well. It's going to be difficult to see which one gets a lot of the run, right? If all 3 are active, I think it's Brate, Otton, and then Keif in that order. You probably don't need any Keif unless Brate is out, but I think Brate and Otton are just pretty decent salary savers. We don't really have anything else that is going to see as much activity as these guys. And it looks like Cade Otton is averaging, or I'm sorry, that was Kokai. Kokaif's only getting about 1 target per game when he does see run. And it looks to be in those goal to go situations. But Cade Otton, I mean, he's 3, 6, 5, 5. I mean, he's getting a pretty decent amount of target volume. So even if Brate is active, I don't mind getting a decent amount of exposure to 1,800 Cade Otton. Again, like we're hoping that they paid off, but on a slate like this where there's so much concentrated ownership and volume at the top, uh, again, like a 3 from Kate Otten is going to be much less impactful than a 3 from a kicker.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's go to the New Orleans side. So Juwan Johnson obviously out. Adam Troutman. I guess I can probably add in a couple of these other scrub dudes. I don't really like any of these guys. Adam Troutman is at 1,200. If I had to choose Adam Troutman or Kate Otten, I'm choosing Kate Otten probably. But Adam Troutman is the starting tight end here. He's projected for like 2 or 3 fantasy points. He's probably not going to pop in optimizers. He's probably going to be around 5% owned. What are your thoughts on Troutman here? I think it's a huge risk, and I don't think that volume just automatically goes from Juwan Johnson to Troutman. I don't think it's going to work that way.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is probably where Taysom Hill should be listed right now, especially with Juwan Johnson out as the starting tight end. So I do think that he's going to get a pretty significant amount of volume. But Adam Troutman was a guy that they did like earlier in the season last year. He ended up getting hurt, came back a little bit early in this season and got hurt again, or whatever. But he does have the ability to go out there and get those big catches and have those touchdowns. So I might be a little bit more high on Troutman than you, especially if he's coming in at like 3 to 5% ownership. I think you can probably get 10 to 15% and be fine. And again, at 1,200, I don't necessarily want to get too caught up in, is he a better play than Kate Otten? They're both just so cheap that I'll have a decent amount of exposure in them just because I'm rotating them out, if that makes sense.
And when we get to building, we're going to be rotating all these guys out. So like in the last spot, we have a nice roster set, and then you just rotate. You get 6 or 7 different lineups with Troutman, all these cheap guys, is whoever you could fit in, just rotate them out. Let's go to kickers and defense. Unfortunately, we got to talk about kickers here. Ryan Suckoff, 4K. Will Lutz, 3,800. They're both probably coming in around 20 to 25% owned. Dude, I don't know. Whatever I say, just ignore. Although yesterday I kind of got it right with McLaughlin. Who was the other kicker? I'm blanking.
Maher.
So Maher was going to be way higher owned. He was getting a way higher projection. And I'm like, why is he getting so, like, what is the deal with this? Why is everybody on Maher and nobody on McLaughlin? It turned out McLaughlin was the right pick. But look, I don't know, man. They're both 4K. They're 38K. They're 3,800. I don't know, man. What do we do here? Just get with the field, right? It's on a low total game.
Yeah. Look, I'm like 95% sure though the Ryan Suckup captain lineup was a New Orleans Saints game last year. So, just keep in mind this might be one of those dumbass slates where Ryan Suckup has 5 field goals and is optimal captain. Probably not, but it's something that I think is something to keep in mind of. Probably only need 1 kickers, probably don't need 2. That's all I got to say about the kickers, man.
So Tampa Bay does not have a very good, they're not a very good red zone team. So, they could stall out and Suckup can get just 3 or 4 30 or 40-yard field goals potentially. And on a slate like this, you get a kicker that scores 12, 15 fantasy points. Man, that guy's probably going to be in the optimal. So let's go to defense. I think a lot of people are going to be interested in the Buccaneers defense here at 4,800. Cowboys defense, I think, was 6,400 or something last night. I wasn't super interested in them at that price. Obviously, they paid off at the end there, or closer to the end. Saints defense 4,200. I don't know, man. Like, what do we do here on a low total game like this, division rivalry? Probably going to hit the under. Are we interested in getting a kicker and a defense? Are we interested in doing that at all?
Not particularly. I mean, just looking at the injury report, man. I mean, Buccaneers are missing their entire secondary. So, I get that the Saints suck, but Chris Olave and some of these guys are better than playing against 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6th string corners. So, I do think that there's a world in which these defenses just don't even get there. I probably won't have any exposure to either tonight.
All right, let's go with our Crown Their Ass segment.
Now, if you want to crown them, then crown their ass.
Ellie, you're going Chris Godwin. I think he'll be the highest owned captain tonight. Evans will probably be up there in the top 5 of highest owned captains. But I think both of these guys are going to be, I'm probably going to have an equal amount of each of them at captain. And if I had to guess, I'd probably have 20 to 25% of each of these guys at captain. What are your thoughts on that? What's your exposure is going to be like? And also, who are some other good options? Obviously, Kamara. We know that, obviously. But who else?
Yeah, I mean, look, these are the two top guys. I think you can try and get a little bit different with Chris Olave at captain. Kamara is fine again, but you need to ensure that he's getting those touchdowns. Like you need to physically go there and help him get in the end zone. Otherwise, he's not going to pay off the captain price. But I think Chris Olave is really my most interesting kind of just pivot off of these main guys. I don't know how much actual captain ownership he's going to get. But again, with no defenders back there, with no defensive backs, this dude could easily have 10, 12 receptions for 120 yards. And even without a touchdown at 8,424 fantasy points, that's enough to be an optimal captain.
So for those of you skipping around, coming right here to this part, we did discuss the Marshawn Lattimore, whether he's in or out. That's going to affect things, a little bit on my end. Maybe I'll have a little bit less Evans, but I think more so in the flex. I still think you should have Evans at captain in case he has one of these home run games. All you need is one giant play from him to really change everything, and maybe 6 receptions or something. All right, let's go to
and to piggyback that thought real quick. Don't just get caught up in that, right? Just because Lattimore might play, at the end of the day, like Mike Evans is a better. You're just gonna have to cut that out, bro. I'm sorry. I don't know. I lost my fucking point.
No, it's okay. Hey, it's all right.
My point.
Hey, it's all good. Let's move on here. Ready? Let's go to our fade.
Yeah, just pain. It was pain everywhere.
All right, so you're looking at fading Saints heavy builds. So does that mean 4-2s, 5-1s? Is that what you mean by heavy? Yeah, I tend to agree with you on that one. I do think, though, you could get different, and I think there is a situation where you could put a couple of these Saints heavy builds in like the Millie Maker or some of these huge contests. And I still think you could probably be okay. But for me, I'm not really going to be interested in getting any 4-man, 5-man Saints. I think that, me personally, I think that the Bucs can win this, and I think they can have a better offensive output. For me, I'm not interested in Dalton in this game. I don't know how many lineups I'm going to end up having at the end of the day, but I'm probably going to be half the field on him. Now, if he comes in at like, I don't know, if he comes in like under 20% owned, which I don't think it's going to happen, then maybe I change my mind. But if he's coming in at 30+% owned, I'm going to fade him. And if he beats me, then hey, primetime Dalton beat me, and I'll move on. Let's go to our lineups. All right, so who do we want to build with first here? Do you want to just click the button and see what happens?
Yeah, let's do it.
Tom Brady at captain, Adam Troutman in the flex, Ryan Suckoff, Chris Olave, Chris Godwin, and Kamara. Not interested in playing Brady at captain. That's just me. Let's build a cash lineup with Godwin, because I think Godwin is the kind of go-to cash captain, I think, in my opinion. So in this case, I think if you're building cash or single entry, obviously you're looking for the highest floor. You're looking for higher owned players, safer bets. You're only going against maybe 1,000 other people or whatever it is you're in. So you don't have to play, Marquez Callaway or any of these crazy plays. So in this case, I think we probably want to put Brady and Dalton in a lineup, considering Dalton's at 9K for cash. Do you agree with that?
Let's see. What happens if we throw in Kamara now?
So 4,700. I think a guy like Adam Troutman is playable in cash because of his price tag. I really do. So that leaves you at 3,500. Maybe you come off of Dalton and go to Olave, right?
Yeah, I think you might have to, and then throw in
that gets us a kicker
or Lutz.
Yeah, this is nice. So what do you think? Suck up or Lutz here?
Probably go suck up.
Yeah. So I feel like that's a pretty solid cash lineup. Troutman is sort of a bullet, sort of a dart throw. He could get you 0, but at 1.2K, this allows you to get all these guys in. It allows you to get Chris Godwin at captain. I don't hate this at all. Let's build a tournament lineup with Godwin at captain. He's probably going to be the highest owned guy. So how do we get different here? Do you want to do an Evans Brady stack?
Yeah, let's do Evans Brady and then Kamara and see where we're at.
All right, so this is where things do get interesting. So 4,100, you're going to have to maybe punt twice here. Unless we want to go with, we could go Troutman. We can get a similar type build just without the kicker. I don't know. What do you think?
Let's go with JP Holtz or literally whatever backup tight end comes in for the Saints. That $200 price.
Okay. That leaves us with 39. So we could get one kicker. You could get Will Lutz. It's a 3-3. You could switch. You could switch Holtz out for a cheap, a $200. Who's $200 that we're interested in on the Bucks?
I mean, you got Rashad Perriman if he's active, because Sean Vaughn, if for whatever reason Lenny doesn't play.
Yeah. See, this is why nobody's going to be playing Brady and Evans with Godwin. It's going to be either or, most likely just Brady.
So I wouldn't be too uncomfortable doing something like this either. You can come off Will Lutz and go down to like Cameron Brate, and that might give you enough to come off of a Perriman and get to like a Rashid Shaheed. Something
almost.
Not quite.
Almost. Yeah, you can't.
You're still in Scotty Miller area.
Yeah, exactly. So this is going to be difficult. So, this is why I kind of like Evans at captain, because you get a little bit of savings and you don't really have to, you're not in that weird zone there in that last spot. So let's try Evans at captain. Let's try Brady. Let's throw in Godwin along with him. And let's put in Kamara. Now that gives us 4,600. So now at least if you wanted to do a kicker, you could just be punting once pretty much with one of these cheap dudes. 600. What are you gonna get? $600. Let's put Suckoff in here. That gets you $600. Who does that open up the door for? O'Keefe, Keyshawn Vaughn, Scotty Miller. Even like I said, these are deep cuts here, but I'm I don't know. It's kind of where this is why this build is not going to be very popular, because you got to rely on these scrubs here in this last spot. Could you go, instead of Suckoff, could you go, Cameron Brate and get you 1,600? Does that get you Shaheed? That does get you Shaheed, right? That's a little bit better.
That's interesting.
That's a little bit better, if I had to guess here. Let's do one without Godwin. Let's leave Brady and Evans in. Let's put Kamara in. Let's do one with Kamara and Taysom. What do you think?
Yeah, that works.
All right, so 8,800. Do you want to go value first, or do you want to go kind of middle of the road for both of these picks?
I think we're going to have to go value first.
All right, so what do you think?
We're going to be able to do middle of the road.
So Kate Otten, Cameron Brate, Troutman, what do you think?
Let's go with Troutman on this one.
All right, Troutman, 7,600. That gets you Lenny. That gets you both running backs. We haven't really done any running back talk, for a reason, because they're hard to fit in. So you can go Lenny, you can go Rashad White, you can do any of these guys. Go down to Julio Jones, Jarvis Landry. You can do Bucks defense. There's a lot of options here. Let me do a kicker here instead. So let's put Suckoff in. 4,800. What does that get us? Buccaneers defense? That's not bad. If you're interested in defense, this is pretty interesting. Kamara Hill, most likely going to get you a lot of red zone opportunities for those guys. They're going to touch the ball a decent amount, and then you run it back with a defense and a kicker. For a 41 total game, that's pretty interesting. All right, do you want to do anything else with it? What other captain? You want to go Olave?
Leave Mike Evans in there. I want to try something real quick.
Okay.
Let's do Mike Evans, Tom Brady. Do Olave and Andy Dalton.
Okay. Olave, Dalton, 7,800. Where do we go here?
That's interesting. So 7,800. I think you go. Well, damn. Throw in Taysom Hill.
Okay. 1,400. Guess who that gets us? Shaheed.
Adam Troutman. So
Shaheed or Troutman.
Oh yeah, you're right. So when I say I'm not going to run Saints heavy bills, I'll probably run this. This is something that I'd be interested in running.
Yeah, that's a nice lineup, man. Evans and Brady running back with 4 Saints. This is a perfect, garbage time lineup as well. Maybe Dalton throws a touchdown in the first half, and then he goes. We saw it against the Cardinals, where Dalton had an absolutely terrible game, and he was the optimal captain somehow. He threw 2 pick sixes, right? Like back to back almost, and then he had he had 4 or 5 turnovers. It still ended up in the optimal. Why? Because of garbage time. All right, let's go to Olave at captain and see how those builds are. Obviously, there's Kamara at captain. We're skipping over that. I'm going to have plenty of Kamara captain, but you get the point. He's right in that Mike Evans range. Olave, do we have to pair him with Andy Dalton? Do you want to do like a 2-4 here?
Let's do a 2-4. Let's throw in Kamara. Well, hold on. Actually, before we do that, let's try and get Mike Evans, Godwin, and Brady. Okay. I want to see if we can get a lineup comfortably with those 3 guys.
All right, Mike Evans, Godwin, Brady, 6,800. Troutman. It's all kind of the same old shit here at this point.
I mean, look, honestly, I think you can throw in Taysom Hill and then punt with like O'Keefe or something like that.
400, yeah, that's interesting. O'Keefe, JP Holtz, any of these guys. Rotate out that last spot. Well, let's go with kickers. Let's go with 1 kicker here to see if we can get a little bit more balance of a build. What do we say? We should probably do Will Lutz here? What do you think?
Yeah, let's go Lutz. The second one was 3K.
3K.
It's Cameron Brate.
Traquan Smith or Cameron Brate straight up. Hey, that's not bad.
Yeah.
2-4, Brady, Godwin, Evans, Brate. Hey, there you go. All right, do you want to do anything crazy? Do you want to put any do you want to do like a Julio Jones captain or anything weird like that? Buccaneers defense, kicker, I don't know. What do you think?
Let's do if we're going to do super weird, I'd say Ryan Suckup captain, but let's do Rachaad White.
Yeah, there you go. I like it, dude. We didn't really have a lot of Rachaad White or Leonard Fournette, and I think that's going to be kind of how the field goes. But I think you can get some decent leverage with Rachaad at captain. You can do the same with Fournette, obviously. Do we want Brady here?
Yep.
Okay. Do we want...
Let's go Brady, Godwin.
Yeah, probably Godwin over Evans here. Kamara, run back.
Yeah, it's on Kamara.
8,500. Hey, this is looking pretty decent. Can we get... we can't get Olave. That would be sick, and we could just punt in the last spot, but we can't. Do you want to get another pass catcher?
Hold on, screw this. Take Godwin now and put in Evans, and then throw in Olave and see what we can do.
Okay, I like that. Olave, 1,100. That gets us not quite Troutman, but yeah. See, this is the problem. Is now you got to go down to these O'Keefe, Scotty Millers, JP Holtz. Those are real punts. When you're looking at guys like Cade Otton, Troutman, and Brate, I still think that those guys are an upper tier of punts. Holtz, not so much. I think you'd be lucky to see him get 1 catch. So that's what you're kind of worried about here. All right, man. So after building this, what are your thoughts, man? What jumped out to you here?
I think we might have to really determine if we think Alvin Kamara is going to get that touchdown. Because if not, like I don't know, I might be more comfortable just going down to Dalton and Olave and paying up to get more Evans and Godwin. So
yeah,
we'll see, man. It's gonna be interesting.
If Kamara doesn't have 4 or 5 receptions out of the backfield, and he doesn't have a touchdown, he's not going to make the optimal, I don't think. The only way that he gets there is 100 yards rushing and like 6-7 receptions. I think he could still make the optimal, but you don't want him at captain at that point. So it's kind of scary. Clearly, Chris Godwin is going to be the most popular guy. He's also the most expensive guy. So if you want to come off of him to a little bit more Mike Evans, that is an option. I think they both have great capabilities to be the highest scoring player on the slate. I think those 2 guys have the highest chance to be the highest scoring players. And then you mix in Brady and Kamara and Olave after that. So what are your thoughts on final score prediction here? And who's your low-owned guy that you think can score?
I'm sticking with 27-17 until it happens, just because it's easiest to remember. And then my low-owned guy that I think can score, I'm going to have to go with Adam Troutman.
Yeah. I'm going to go 24-17 here, Buccaneers. And, man, I don't know. Rashid Shaheed? What's Taysom Hill's ownership going to be? Let me look real quick. He's going to be under 10% owned. I'm going with Taysom Hill.
Well, Jesus, if he's going to be under 20% owned, that's probably crazy. Like this is the one time where you can justify getting a little bit more Taysom Hill with no tight ends. Man.
Yeah, because nobody wants to pay $6,400. Remember back in the day when he was classified as a tight end and they didn't give him that backup quarterback pricing, and he was like $400 or $1,200 or $1,800. That's when we were absolutely obsessed with him, and that's when he didn't ever do anything. And now he's priced up, and now he does a lot. So. All right, guys. Well, we appreciate it. Throw us a like on the way out. If we get to 900 subscribers, we're going to give away another one of those $50 gift cards. So help us out with that. Hit subscribe, and we will see you for Thursday Night Football.